The Four Horsemen are continued with the drama of Ragnarok and Armageddon as they're unfolding still, so here is the latest update. It seems that the war between heaven and hell began on the fields of Gog and Magog thousands of years ago, which in modern times is known as Bosnia and Serbia. What started it all was an overlord tyrant known as Sargon of Akkad, circa 2500–3000 BC. I say estimated because all records pertaining to Sargon have been falsified based on the 3 separate tablets that all proclaim his birth, his rise to the throne of Assyria, and his 34 victory siege across the deserts of the Arabian regions. In the end he basically became the first emperor and ruler of the first empire of the world. Now currently on Earth, one has risen through the struggles of today's spiritual beliefs and found that this ancient poltergeist who still haunts the world of today through these stone tablets of destiny, or as his alias that was a spiritual projection of him called Thoth, the self-made god on Earth, had called the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. The Hermetic tablets were just distractions from the real tablets that he planned to use to fool the world into forgetting his atrocities committed while rising to the Assyrian throne. After Hitler, Napoleon, Genghis Khan and Putin, we have learned that you don't become emperor of the world by being a nice guy. This theological conflict is rising amidst people of other cultures as they discover more truths of their ancestors' hardships, and their own current spiritual conflicts are generated around this source as the cause behind them. So the holy armies of the faithful are awakening to this threat, and an inevitable conflict is rising towards the fields where this conflict began many years ago, in the fields of Tel Megiddo. Heimdall sees this conflict about to arise, which will require the chains that hold Loki and his sons fastened to the boulder of Sisyphus, and also holds Hel, or as history knows her better as Hera, in the underworld. The chains will be needed to cast Sargon into the lake of fire as they did after the battle of Tiamat when he was cast down before at the end of the first war of heaven, but this was only a projection of him. However, Sargon is the false prophet by standards of his deeds in the war between Assyria and Sumeria, where he was from. You see, the truth behind Sargon past was that he was a bandit raiding the villages of Sumeria who rose to great numbers and laid siege to Assyria. His first conquests over Assyria began with him claiming to be Shakaras, a Sumerian falsified serpent god, and destroyed the true serpent god's temples of Set, the Assyrian serpent god. As his conquests spread, he destroyed all tablet records as he went and placed falsified duplicate tablets exclaiming his version of history, which is why the only history found in this era is Sumerian history. Later, once he had taken the throne from Ashurbanipal, he proclaimed that all sorcery was illegal and punishable by execution, and that law is still upheld to this day. Only in recent years did they stop executing people because of it. The real reason for this was not because of sorcery but because of his personal agenda to completely wipe all traces of Assyria from history. Now back to current events. Sargon had used a mixture of ancient arts, the Chinese art of mirror magic, the shadow art of doppelgangers and necromancy to create a molded duplicate image of Lucifer, and bestowed upon him all the concepts of what Lucifer's power and authority was rumored to be, in a plan to substitute the lead figure of the prophesied final conflict with his own version in order to instead bring about the apocalypse or the end of all creation, so that he can remake all creation as he had done with the earth in the flood of Noah's tale. To do this, he conjured the very fabrics and elements of that which encompasses the sins of greed, gluttony and wrath, and personified each of them in order to tap into the fundamental principles of the one considered to be Lucifer, and through them empowered his creation, whose name was Samael, not to be confused with the biblical fallen angel Samael, and made him to be a creator of more like himself, thus raising an army of 144,000 doppelgangers all across history who were directly linked to bringing about and even designing the concept of Armageddon. Targets known to be duplicated and replaced were Eve in the Garden of Eden, whose doppelganger was Lilith, God during the flood of Noah, whose doppelganger was the demiurge referenced through the holy book of the invisible spirit, and the risen Christ during the encounters experienced by Paul after the crucifixion of Jesus, among many others. The known documented encounters with these evil twins are the events leading up to the switch between the real target and the duplicate. The target will experience a severe scenario that is apparent in all the above cases. Prior to the events, they each experienced a moment that had driven them into solitude where the world around them could not have been concerned as to their whereabouts or their safety even. Such as Eve had just eaten of the fruit and was experiencing severe feelings of shame for her nudity, as was Adam. God had just passed down the order to have the children of the fallen slain, and Jesus had just been executed and betrayed by his own friends, not to mention the corruption of the world he was striving to save. They were all tied together as they each played a fundamental role in the events that led to the final conflict. This plan was stopped by a joint effort between Lucifer and Michael as well as God. Heaven dispatched a regiment of archangels and assigned them as guardians over those targeted by Samael, while Michael and Lucifer confronted Samael and his creators, the personified sins. Lucifer, in his wide understanding of things, knew the fundamentals of the personified conjurations and dispelled their essence back into the fabrics of existence from where they came. He knew any other course of action would jeopardize the fabrics they were made of. This way he kept the balance of creation safe. Michael battled Samael, who was empowered to directly defy the power and authority of Lucifer from the first conflict in heaven. He easily overcame Samael and cast him into hell. He could not directly assault Samael either because of the principles of being Lucifer's doppelganger meant that any damage to Samael would also damage Lucifer. With them defeated and the other doppelgangers handled with the guardian angels and Thai acquiring the counterspell that dismissed the mirror magic that bound them together, the victory came easily. However, the principles of a doppelganger's effect allows them to not only know the thoughts and plans of their target, but whatever befalls the evil twin also affects the one he is mirrored from. These topics can be found within the records of scrying mirror magic and black mirrors, as well as the origin of the craft that began in ancient Chinese lore. This is also tied to the legends pertaining to the armies of Samael's and Lilith's demons who bore a striking resemblance, it is said, to other individuals. However, all that power and authority that was channeled into Samael was also channeled into Lucifer, empowering him to achieve his destiny and creating, once again, his own downfall and destruction, or so Michael hoped. But the adversary is cunning, and any downfall that occurred was to be a part of Lucifer's plans that fooled the world into believing him to be destined as a defeated adversary, which provided him an escape from total destruction. Without his creators, one would think Samael would be lost, but they had made him too powerful to be stopped so simply, and Samael continued on his quest for which he was designed and started towards his goal of rebuilding the Tower of Babylon in order to reconnect the bridge to the mortal realm in hell. However, something unforeseen happened. In Samael's quest to achieve his purpose, he had eventually gained enough actions separate from the one he was mirrored from and became self-aware and developed a soul, which is why Samael's name is found in the Book of Life, as he was eventually an intended design of the Creator as a means in which to stop the true Satan, Sargon, who went and conjured 3 new replacements from the dead to replace the 3 manifested sins. Commanders known for their renounced skill as tacticians in the field of battle. He summoned forth Osiris, Balandastoth, the Naghulian giant and father of both Atlas and his brother Goliath, and sent them to deal with Lucifer. Not amused by his lack of effort, Lucifer went back across the spans of time and bartered a deal with Solomon for his soul in exchange for the knowledge of sorcery as well as geological weather patterns and stellar astrophysics, in a promise to make him the greatest king ever to be known. Once he had acquired the soul of Solomon, he possessed the means in which to call his spirit and life energy back from the spiritual realm. Setting the most powerful sorcerer and forger of the seals that trapped the warlords of Hell's first army, the Rasham, or children of the Nephilim who died in the flood of Noah's tale, within Tartarus. The way Lucifer went about bartering for the soul of a boy whose language was not spoken openly for thousands of years was quite interesting. Rewriting a song he had heard from his childhood and then recorded it in Hebrew, he bartered for Solomon's soul with a theatrical offer I have translated into English here. Now that heaven wants to call my bluff, I guess I'll have to pull out my aces and trump these disbelievers with a slight piece of evidence that no one else but the devil would possess. The contract for Solomon's soul. I'm taking the advice of a semi-non-existent, transparent only because he's so shallow colleague of mine rumored to be called dark matter by getting an ancient piece of parchment, or toast, and have them write my name on that shit. Or better yet, I'll prophesize my era of walking the earth through stellar events unique to our time period, like a total lunar eclipse during the supermoon phase and the harvest blood moon that occurred in one night last year, but I'll have it scratched down 4,500 years ago. Good advice, dark matter. So here is the contract of Solomon in which I imparted my knowledge, and imbued him with the mystical energy allowing him to be capable of casting magic, while I imparted vivid visions of basic astrophysics that made him a legendary king of his time. I admit I did sing it to him, but this Johnny one-tone voice translator does not sing very well. The contract of Solomon. I admit that since the flood I've been a little nasty. They weren't wrong to call me a djinn, by which you'll find that since that age I've repented most of my rage, forgave the light for throwing my children in the ditch. True? Yes. And I fortunately know a little magic. It's a talent that I always have possessed, and arcanism, please don't laugh, I used it on behalf of the miserable, the lonely and depressed. Pathetic. Poor unfortunate souls in pain and need. This one wants to lose some weight, this one wants to get the girl, and do I help them? Yes, I do. Those poor unfortunate souls, so sad so true, they come begging to my cauldron crying spells, Lucifer please, and I help them? Yes, I do. Those poor unfortunate souls, now it's happened once or twice that they could pay my price, so I had to reap them of their pathetic souls. Yes, I've had a few complaints, but on the whole I've been a saint to those poor unfortunate souls. Now Solomon, here's the deal. I'll give you knowledge beyond that of any sultan who has yet to have ever lived. I'm not talking the seasons of the rains and the flourishment of the people only, but of the stars and what they are and how they move across the sky. You will become known as the wisest, most powerful sorcerer ever to walk the ages of your time. They'll even call you and your seed incarnations of the gods themselves. It won't cost much, just token that won't even be missed. The cost is your soul. Upon your death, the energy of that which is the life within you becomes mine. You must lock it away with your own powers of sorcery, as by which you will come to understand them and slumber, never reincarnating for 4,500 years when you reach the age in which I will walk the earth. I'll even go as far as promising that when the proper time comes during the next full moon upon the day of omens that shall follow a half of a season from the blood moon's complete eclipse, 2019 full season cycles after the coming Saviour of man from sin is put to death upon the cross in the Valley of Skulls called Golgotha, you shall find me on the stroke of the midnight hour, and I shall give you a new form for a time in which I will need you to gather an army from your era of the most powerful warriors and build that army throughout time and resurrect them to fight against the armies of the wicked that become so filled with evil they no longer heed my word, and I am the incarnate of all which is evil. In your new form you shall lay waste to the great conqueror Sargon of Akkad, who was the Dark One of legend, yet also called Thoth, and the impostor of me made by his magic. Destroy them, and your services with me will be complete, and after you will be free to do as you please. In the meantime, while you live in your time, grow strong and master your magic. Understanding how the earth and the stars move through the sky day to day will increase your magic's power and the belief of your people. To agree to this deal, just sign on the dotted line and keep to our bargain, and defeat any who stray you from this path, for if you fall away from our agreement, you, your life, your people and your kingdom will be lost to the winds of oblivion. Succeed, and afterwards your power and your kingdom will be free to do as you please. Sure, it will cost you life for over 4,000 years, but to be a pharaoh you gotta put a little sacrifice into it, and don't underestimate the importance of a mummy's undead body language, huh? You poor unfortunate soul, it's sad so true, but if want to be a king, my boy, you'll have to give up control. Besides, what the price compared to a truly immortal soul? Now take a gulp and a deep breath, my boy, and just sign the goddamn scroll, you poor unfortunate soul. What's my name again? Ha ha ha, take that, David Copperfield and Stephen King.